Rusty, and now Robin Gorman with our invocation.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you because you first loved us. We praise you for all the blessings you have bestowed upon us as we move through our daily lives. So often we forget that all we have has come from you. Please keep us mindful of the needs of others and how we might use our gifts for their betterment. Bless this food we've eaten to the nourishment of our bodies, and bless those who have prepared it. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Now, for our visiting Rotarians and guests, very important. Stop by the train, but not stopped.
We made it. We're here. So we only have one visiting Rotarian today, and that's Mr. Jim Hudson. Over there in the back. Thank you, Mr. Hudson, for coming today. And if anybody has any visiting Rotarians, we will pass around the mic. Stand up, and we'll get it to you.
Yeah, Charles.
We'll get the mic to you so you can announce. Thank you.
Ken Childs, I'm pleased to have as my guest Miss Stacy Beads of Columbia.
Afternoon, I'm Hal Stevenson. I'd like to introduce my wife, Deanna. She's also my partner and CEO of Grace Outdoor.
Now with the Gourmet Shop, but I have as my guest today Christy Davis from Christy Davis Interiors.
Good afternoon, I'm Meredith Atkinson with MGA Marketing, and I am proud to introduce my husband, Daniel Atkinson, and he is a project manager and roadway engineer with Holt Consulting.
In important news, the Gamecocks have a scrimmage today at 3:30, so next week I'll give you the update on how it went. See you guys.
Health and happiness.
Good afternoon. I have a couple of announcements, and hopefully you might remember the first gentleman that I'm about to speak to you about, but Maynard Cusworth, who's a friend of Jim Hamilton's. I don't know if you recall, he came to visit us some time ago, and he was a World War II pilot, not that far back, but anyway, he did come to visit once, and he visited our club, and he's in Lexington Medical Center. He's 98 years old now, and he's doing pretty well and is able to sit up. So for those of you who know him, we're happy to hear and share that good news about Maynard Cusworth. Bob Helms, who is here, right back there, stand up and look at Bob Helms, because he had a pacemaker just put in recently, like not even 2 weeks ago. And he's up and around and talking and doing really well, and he'd do it again if he had to. Glad you're back. We have a fun fact for you, not a fun fact. Well, I got a historical fact about the cart bucket, and it's Alzheimer's. I think starting today, we're going to be sharing an interesting fact or two about Alzheimer's disease or dementia. So today's facts include people living with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. In the United States, there are 5.8 million, and in South Carolina alone, 92,000. So our purpose for doing and sharing this fact is so that you can appreciate the importance of the work that we do by raising the funds for the cart bucket, because the disease needs a lot more support and research, and thank you for your weekly donations towards the cart bucket. I don't think Ann is here yet, or is she here? I don't know. There might still be some folks held up by the train. But there's some good news about Ann. who was she's the 2019, she was one of the 2019 Women of Influence. Having been born in Charleston, this is sort of based on your community involvement and impact on the community over your time in the area. And some of her community involvement, as if you don't know, includes she served as the past president for the Columbia Rotary Club. She was Rotarian of the Year in 2016-17. Past president for the following boards of directors: the United Way of Sumter, Clarendon and Lee counties, Sumter YMCA, the Sumter Forum. She was the chairwoman, Church Council at Trinity United Methodist Church, Landon University Board of Trustees, and the past president and founding member of the South Carolina Probation and Parole Association. So I got a few little things that she offers. Something I wish I'd known earlier in my career include professionally and personally always be prepared for unexpected financial expenses. And as a woman who has had a major influence on her life, guess who? Her daughter, Melissa Evans, who gave her the honor of being her mother, and my mother, Sabrina Timmerman Walker. And her best advice on managing work and personal life balance is to maintain strong relationships with family and friends, do not sweat the small stuff, and maintain your sense of humor always. Congratulations, Ann. I hope you get to hear this on the video. She's not here, but let's give her you all may know that, or you may not know, as information, August is Rotary Membership and New Club Development Month. And as such, there's a summit being held on next Saturday, August 24th, over at Saxagatha Presbyterian Church in Lexington, starting at 9:30 in the morning and will last until about 1-ish or so. There are 4 of us from our club that will be participating, and they include Jesse Bullard, Mason Hardy, Glenn Matthews, and me. So we'll learn a lot, bring a lot, and if there's another person interested, we haven't yet identified who that person might be, but they might surface today or tomorrow, this and that. So we'll keep you informed on that. Okay, so today, our topic is, we're going to figure out and learn about, I think, some, what is it called, malfunction junction facts and things about that. Well, you know, I have some office jokes, and I also have some beer jokes. And I don't know which one you prefer today, but whoever did Malfunction Junction may have been on the beer at the time, but it's okay, we'll wrap up with that. But I'll give you a couple of little office funnies, if you just bear with me for a moment. Retirement is wonderful. It's doing nothing without worrying about getting caught. Employer said, we need someone responsible for the job. The job applicant says, sir, your search ends here. In my previous job, whenever something went wrong, everybody said I was responsible. 2 factory workers are talking. The woman says, I can make it. The boss gives me the day off. The man replies, and how would you do that? The woman says, just wait and see. She then hangs upside down from the ceiling. The boss comes in and says, what are you doing? The woman replies, I'm a light bulb. The boss then says, you've been working so much that you've gone crazy. I think you need to take the day off. The man starts to follow her, and the boss says, where are you going? The man says, I'm going home too. I can't work in the dark. Why beer is essential to a happy life. Now, I'm going to start out with Babe Ruth, and this is something he actually quoted, so no wonder he scored so high in baseball. But he says, sometimes when I reflect on all the beer I drink, I feel ashamed. Then I look into the glass and think about the workers in the brewery and all of their hopes and dreams. If I did not drink this beer, they might be out of work, and their dreams would be shattered. I think it is better to drink this beer and let dreams come true than be selfish and worry about my liver. Believe it or not. And this one is by George Bernard Shaw. I'm sure many of you know George Bernard Shaw. When we drink, we get drunk. When we get drunk, we fall asleep. When we fall asleep, we commit no sin. When we commit no sin, we go to heaven. So let's all get drunk and go to heaven. George Bernard Shaw. And Benjamin Franklin had the nerve to say, beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. So with that, my friends, I'm going to end with, remember in your spelling that I comes before E, except in Budweiser. Have a wonderful beerless week, or have a lot of it, either one. Thanks for your time today. Have a great week.
Thank you, Catherine. Cheers, everybody. Okay, now I don't need to remind you to make a contribution to the cart buckets that are on your table after that fun little fact. We all know how much we need to be contributing towards the research, so please put your coins in today and every week. Just quick updates. Our food packing event has been scheduled for December 7th, right here at Siegel's. We've been asked by our district governor to consider hosting several clubs at the same time with us. So that's still being worked out, I'm not sure, but at any rate, we're going to be here. And it's going to be a fun time and also a great chance for us to do something meaningful together for the people in our community. So mark your calendar, December 7th. It'll be in the morning. Not sure of exact time last year, Stephen, you remember? It was early. I would say 8 or 9, 8:30 or 9. But I'll let you know. And speaking of details, December 16th, we're having our club social at the Lace House. So mark your calendars. I've already talked to Jesse Bullard, and Southern Way is going to do the catering. So it ought to be a very fun event. So mark your calendars, and I'll let you know details later. Okay, now on to our program. And Carrie Powers will introduce our speakers.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, President Louisa. It's always very nice to be back up here with all of you. I appreciated Mason coming and asking me to do this. As the president of the IRMO Chamber, I have a lot of interest in what happens with the Carolina Crossroads. I grew up in Atlanta. I grew up in Atlanta with the original malfunction junction until somebody called it Spaghetti Junction, so I guess, you know, it's a little better. But I know your goal is to make sure that Malfunction Junction leaves the vernacular of everyone in this room before the end of the day, and good luck with that. I don't have to traverse that area anymore now. I just get to go over the dam every day in my commute, so I'm very grateful for that. But today we have two speakers. We have Brian Klauk and we have Lad Gibson, both of them from the South Carolina Department of Transportation. And I'm going to let them sort of have all of the speaking time here, but both of them are engineers, and they are both, we'll see, Brian is a project manager for Carolina Crossroads, and he's been doing this for more than 20 years. And also Lad, he is a graduate of Clemson, which many of you in this room will love that. And he has been working with the Department of Transportation since 2006. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Brian first, and he'll talk to you about the Carolina Crossroads project.
Well, if I don't convince you to change it from Malfunction and Junction to Carolina Crossroads by the end of this meeting, maybe we'll earn it by the end of construction. That's our real goal. So about 4 years ago, we embarked on a large process called an environmental impact statement. And so it combines all of the engineering efforts with environmental studies and public input, all of that coming together to what we've now done in May, and that was to get an approved environmental impact statement and a record of decision. Essentially, it means we've come up with a solution with the public to fix Malfunction Junction. So this is the corridor that we've identified, and it's larger than just what people think of as the Malfunction Junction proper, where 26 and I-20 come together, where that cloverleaf is, those 4 loops. That's kind of what people think of that area, in addition to I-26 and 126. So all of those together, kind of where people think Malfunction Junction is. But we've looked at that corridor, and we've identified, you know what, we need to improve even more than that. So everything that's in the blue, it's 14 miles worth of interstate. It's 12 interchanges, 19 existing structures, and in the heart of that area, over 134,000 vehicles per day on average traverse that area. So it's clearly very important to us, it's very important to our community, it's very important to freight, to commuters, to travelers. This is something that's been on our radar screen as long as it has been on yours. And we finally have the fortunate ability to be able to do something about it. So what we're looking at doing is 2 primary purposes: to improve congestion and improve congestion and improve mobility as well. Secondary purposes are to improve freight mobility, improve safety in the corridor, and improve system linkages. That means getting from point A to point Z without having to go around everywhere, to get there in a closer time and more easily. So like I said, we've been doing this for about 4 years, but laying the groundwork has been going on much longer than that. What we experience every day going through that corridor actually was only part of a construction project that we had identified in the 70s and 80s. Many of you may remember when we widened I-126 to 4 lanes in each direction, did a big flyover from downtown Columbia going towards the airport, and did several other things. Those were actually part of a larger solution to fixing Malfunction Junction we never were able to complete. So sometimes when you're driving on I-20 and you come up where I-26 crosses over, you may see those concrete columns that kind of stub off in the median. Those actually were originally designed to carry other bridges and other what we call collector distributor roads. That is long ramps that are off the side of the main interstate that would carry traffic away from that main interstate traffic that just wants to go through. We didn't have the opportunity to complete those, but we are bringing that concept back and modernizing it, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But I just wanted you to know that, like I said, along with you, we've had this identified as a project and an area of concern for a very long time. All right, so I'll get right down to brass tacks here. In this area around Harbison Boulevard at I-26, I'm going to focus in on this screen over here. That's Harbison Boulevard, and I-26 runs diagonally across the screen. We're going to focus in on this area between Harbison and Piney Grove Road. And this is what it'll look like in that area. We're widening to add an additional travel lane in each direction. So it'll be 4 in each direction, plus an auxiliary lane that connects the exit ramp or the entrance ramp from Piney Grove to the exit ramp, the newly designed exit ramp at Harbison. So you see it's 5 lanes in each direction. And then the frontage roads have been moved out slightly to accommodate that widening. And then we zoom in a little more. This is the current cloverleaf at I-26 at I-20. Everything you see kind of this orange color, orangey brown color, that's to be eliminated. So the loops are all removed. And we've replaced them with what are called directional ramps. And these ramps are designed for a 45-mile-an-hour design speed. So no longer do you have to hit those ramps and slow down and go around a loop. You'll be going at 45 miles an hour around those. The other thing that this does is it eliminates where you have a loop back-to-back. So if you can imagine, As we all do, as we drive this area, when we come up to one of those loops and we need to take one, we're trying to exit as somebody else is trying to enter on the loop behind you. And that happens on the top and the bottom, all around. That's called a weave, because the cars weave between each other. So one of the main things we wanted to do with this design is to eliminate all the weaves in the project, unless they're on these ramps that are on the outside. So all of those loops are removed and all of those weaves are removed. And it looks like this. So that's actually I-26 between I-20 and St. Andrews Road, kind of down that, in that flat spot in the bottom. You'll see that we've got a tremendous number of lanes here. I-26 main line is these two sections right here, one going eastbound and one going west. And then you'll notice that we have these other lanes out here separated by these concrete barriers. So that's taking a cross-section, looking at these ramps that, like I said, are called collector-distributor roads. And they're ramps where you exit early. That's another part of the philosophy that we have to this selected alternative. And that is, instead of waiting till you get right up to the intersection or the interchange of 20 and 26, about a mile away you're going to exit first. So if you want to, let's say you're coming from Irmo and you want to go to Florence, and you're driving down and you take an exit about a mile before you hit I-20. What that does is it gets all those vehicles off onto a separated roadway, separated by a barrier. Now those vehicles don't mix. The weave is eliminated. And so it makes your choices early. It removes what's called turbulence. You can all imagine it in liquid. If you imagine traffic, turbulence is what slows traffic down. And so we're eliminating that by getting people off early. And we've done that in all the directions around 26 and 20. So you'll see these extra lanes on the side. That's what this ramp is, and this one as well. All right. So now we've slid down a little bit, southeast, and we're looking at Bush River Road, I-26 between the Bush River Road overpass and I-20. And again, you'll see the concept of we're adding more capacity for lanes or for additional traffic, and we're also separating those vehicles that need to go to a different destination interstate off to the side. So one of the big things is we wanted to get freight moving through. And right now, if you want to go from, let's say, Irmo, or let's say Spartanburg, down to Charleston, you have to actually switch lanes to stay on I-26. So it feels like you're exiting. So we flip that around. So if you're in one of the inside lanes, or one of the, will soon be 3 or 4 inside lanes, you'll actually just stay in that lane, and you can stay going on I-26. If you want to exit and come downtown, it'll be something different. All right, I-20 is also getting a little makeover, basically from the Broad River to the Saluda River. And it's going to have a similar look and feel, where vehicles have exited and they're on those separated ramps, so they don't mix in with that traffic on the mainline interstate. All right, and with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lad and let him talk about some of the other things that we're doing. And we're going to have a Q&A time at the end as well.
Thank you, Brian. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this project's really different in so many ways from a lot of the other projects that we do at the agency. One of the biggest things being that from Federal Highway's perspective, this is classified as a major project because it's over $500 million. We've classified it at the agency as a mega project because it's going to be well over $1 billion. It's all said and done. So with that being said, we really didn't feel like we could try to deliver this project the same way that we've always delivered projects. I mean, this is just not comparable like a small bridge replacement. So one of the things that we looked at doing, we talked to some of our sister states and some other states across the country that had delivered mega-type projects, these billion-dollar projects, and one thing that we consistently saw was a dedicated project management team. Now, we've always had dedicated project management. Brian, for example, has been a project manager for a while. I've been a project manager at the agency in the past. But the way we're set up, Brian probably at one time was responsible for 60 to 70 projects at any given time. And it's very difficult to give the level of attention that a project like this needs when you're managing that many projects. So one thing we saw early was the need for this dedicated project management team. So what that allows you to do is it really gives us some of that management continuity. We talked normally on our traditional projects, we would develop those in pre-construction and then we'd hand them over to our construction office to deliver the rest of that contract. Well, there's a lot of positives behind having some of that management continuity as we work through that alternatives development process that Brian referred to earlier. We're gonna take that knowledge and have that management continuity as we go into the construction phase of the project. Another thing you'll see is consistent decision making as well as responsive decision making. On this project, probably when it's at its heyday, we'll probably be looking at cash flows reaching $1 million a day. That's a lot of money going through. Contractors are out there with all that equipment. If they ask you a question, which we expect thousands of questions to come in this project when it comes through. So if they deliver something to us, they're going to want a quick turnaround because having that equipment sitting out there idle just means money for them. So we also get that open communication with the contractors, a real cooperative working relationship with the design build team. So the way we set this up, very similar to what other agencies have done. We basically have kind of that blue level in the middle is our project management team. I'm the director of medical projects at SCDOT. Brian's the project manager. We have two other managers that work with us daily, a construction manager and then a design manager. And those green boxes are not 4 or 5 people. That's really meant to represent probably 75 to 100 people. That's a lot of consultant help. We don't have 75 or 100 DOT employees every day working on this one project, but we do have folks that come in and out with various levels of experience, but we certainly do have some consultants that are helping us out. And of course, we're right there with our federal highway partners that are associated with this project as well. And the way we're set up, I report directly to the Deputy Secretary of Engineering, and why that's important is if the decision makers are right there, we're at the top, and it's a really short line to get to the Deputy Secretary, so when something comes up, we're right there to be able to respond to that. So another thing that we're proposing to do is that's a little different. Our group's actually planning on co-locating out into the field with the design build contractor when that time comes to go to construction. So we'll be out there. I mean, we certainly envision the possibility of having our trailers or whatever field offices we have literally next door to the contractor, so that we can collaborate very quickly and efficiently on this project. So. All right, so I've mentioned design build a couple of times, so I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about design build. Some of you probably know exactly what that is, others may not. But for those that don't, I'm going to begin by explaining what it's not and what our traditional approach to construction projects is, and that is what we would call design bid build. So in a design bid build scenario, which again is more of our norm, you basically, Brian talked about going through that environmental process where we select an alternative. All that's exactly the same. We do that. But what we would do then is we develop those plans to 100%. So all the details to the minute details are worked out. 100% plans, we give them all the specifications. We pretty much tell them exactly what we want the contractor to do. And then we would go out and secure all the right-of-way for the project. We would let the project, whoever the lowest bidder is, would be selected as long as they were responsive. And then we would execute a contract, and they would build it exactly the way we designed it. And that certainly can work. It's worked effectively for years. But on these larger type projects, we found that an alternative project delivery is a better solution, either design build or some other. Design build is what we're legislatively allowed to do, and we've been very successful with it through the years. Projects like the Cooper River Bridge were delivered via design build. 85 for 85 up in the upstate is being done through a design build. So again, we start out the same way we did before. We go through that NEPA process. But after we get that selected alternative, our plan development is really more in the 20 to 30% range. We basically make sure we can build the design. And I know the plans that Brian showed you earlier, they are detailed. There's a lot of information there, but there's still some details that have to be worked out to take those to 100%. So on design build, the first thing we would do is really a 2-step procurement process. The first step we go through is what's called a request for qualifications. And basically we put out an RFQ that asks contractors to submit information about their teams. And in this situation, the contractor and a designer actually team up together to come up with a design-build team. And there'll be multiple teams that would compete for this project. And they'll submit us their qualifications, and then we'll score those qualifications, and then we'll shortlist from there. We'll develop a short list of teams that are qualified and capable. Usually 3 is the maximum number. We can go up to 5, but 3 is traditionally what we would go through with it. The second stage of that procurement process is what's called the request for proposals. And in that situation, basically what we're doing is we're putting out our performance or prescriptive requirements that we want as a part of the project. So the way I like to describe, so performance is more outcomes based, like what you want to get out. Prescriptive is basically describing the methods. So if I was going to give you an example, maybe on this project, for example, a prescriptive requirement for like St. Andrews Road, we would come out and say, I want you to build me a grade separated interchange at St. Andrews Road at I-26. I want it to be a tight urban diamond. I want to have dual left turns at the top. I want to have single exits off to the right. I want the signal timing to be exactly like this. It's just very prescriptive and specific as to what we're looking for. Performance-based kind of goes in the opposite direction. It's a little tougher to do, but it really opens up the design a little bit. So in performance-based, we might say the same thing. We want a grade separated interchange, but we wouldn't necessarily specify the type. We might just say it's got to perform at a certain level of service at, say, design year 2040. And that might be all the information. That's kind of a simplified example, but just to kind of give you the difference between telling them exactly what you want and some broader broader performance-based requirements. So, and in this project, we'll probably have some of both. In some areas, we will need to be very prescriptive about what we want, but it's a performance-based process. So after that, the teams will actually submit a technical proposal to us, all 3 teams that were shortlisted, based on those requirements that we put out there. And then they would also submit a cost proposal as well. And then we score those technical proposals and evaluate the cost that are submitted. And we're really looking for what's considered to be the best value for the state. That's what we're looking for. We want what's the best value for the taxpayers and for us. And so it's going to be a combination of what the contractor's project approach is. We're going to be looking at their past performance on similar type projects. I always like to say if you're having some blood drawn, maybe getting the lowest bid on maybe getting some blood drawn wouldn't be a bad thing, but if you're getting bypass surgery, I want somebody that's done it before. I don't know about y'all. So we certainly want them to have experience of doing similar type projects. We're looking at some of the quality and innovations that they're proposing as a part of their submittal, and then of course the cost that I mentioned is certainly a factor that plays in. So the design build team then, whoever we award the project to, again, they've still done a limited amount of design work at that point. They've done enough to get along that they can price it, but then once we award, you're not going to see bulldozers out there necessarily on day one. They do have to finalize the design, and that doesn't take a significant amount of time, but it's not like we award the contract and then the bulldozers go hit. So there's still some design work to be done, and we have to approve those designs. But the good thing is there's stuff that's going on in the meantime. For example, we're out there buying right-of-way, which is certainly getting us a head start on that. But again, the big difference between design build and bid build is basically it allows the contractors, kind of whatever their specialized or their strengths and specialized techniques are, they can kind of marry those up with what their plans actually look like. Maybe they're better at building a certain type of bridge. So in a bid build that I mentioned before, we decide what that bridge looks like. And if that contractor's not really efficient at doing that, he puts a bid in. But if we let him decide what that bridge is going to look like, he can kind of marry up his techniques to his design. So it's much more efficient. We get a lot of innovation with that. And again, even though we are buying some of the right-of-way up front, all the right-of-way does not have to be purchased. We could put some of that onto the design builder and let them finish the right-of-way. So it allows us to expedite the process, as well as the fact that the design plans don't have to be 100% complete the day we go into contract. So the way I like to kind of wrap up describing design build, if you want to kind of put it in kind of artist terms, think about us basically having a canvas, and we decide how big the canvas is, and we kind of pencil sketch in what we want. but then that design build team kind of comes in and paints the portrait. They're kind of finalizing. So that's design build. I get it easy. I get 2 slides. Brian had all the tough stuff. So here's some information on how you can reach the team from any of these methods. I would certainly encourage you to go to our website for Carolina Crossroads. We keep a lot of information on that. We're in the process of kind of updating that because we're moving from that kind of that NEPA stage and getting that record of decision that Brian mentioned earlier. We're kind of working through, we're buying right-of-way right now. We're getting some environmental permits, but the next thing will be procuring that design build contractor, and then the next step that everybody really wants is when you're going to start digging, and that's the next big step. So we'll have some updates on that here soon on the website. So again, I encourage you to go there. So with that, I'm sure there's going to be some questions, and we'll open it up and we'll go from there. Yes, sir.
Thanks for sharing that with us. For those of us that might be commuting during the project, you talked about what the current flow is. Is there anything planned in there that says, oh, if we construct this way, we have to maintain a certain amount of flow?
So it's fairly common. I will tell you this before I make this statement. So I've had people ask me before, what's it going to be like during construction? And I always like to, this probably isn't a popular response, but I've said this before. It's bad now, and it's going to be bad during construction. But obviously when we finish, there will certainly be relief. Now, with that being said, there will be some restrictions. Our normal restrictions, at least for SCDOT, a lot of times is to not allow any lane closures during the day. I will tell you, if we did not allow lane closures on this particular project, it would take us 20 years to build it. It would be very, very, very difficult. Now, I understand we cannot go out there and close, 2 inbound lanes. I think everybody remembers the truck that turned over a few years ago right there on 26 near the fireworks place, and it had, had the interstate pretty much locked down. And I mean, it took the city all day to recover from it. And so we know we can't go in there and shut down 2 or 3 lanes and expect traffic just to get around on the frontage roads or sideways. We know that's not going to work. But there will be probably some times where we give the contractor a little bit more leeway during daylight hours where they can be more efficient. If they just have to build this at night, it won't be very safe, and it'll take a lot longer. Some other things that we're doing as a part of that, we're working very closely with the comment and looking at some options. We're proposing to do a couple of parking rides at the edges of the project corridor, and then coordinating with the comment to maybe have some alternative routes, as well as the way we're proposing to do the project, maybe providing a little more free flow on some of the alternate routes, such as Broad River Road. So that's some of the things that we're doing to try to make it better, but it'll still be difficult. Yes, sir.
My good friend Gene Rowlett is awful thankful that they didn't name Malfunction Junction after him, because he's the one that designed it. I guess he was glad they called it something besides Rowlett Junction, but looks like y'all are, with the design build approach, you're looking to diversify who gets blamed if it doesn't work.
Well, that would be nice. I think you're probably looking at the 2 cats that are going to get blamed if it doesn't work out. So it's, but no, I think a design build is a good approach. I don't know if Brian mentioned this earlier. I mean, the design that was actually proposed, it was one of the designs that we looked at as an alternative, and it actually functioned very well. Brian mentioned, we just never finished building the project, and I will not pretend to stand up here. I mean, I've been at DOT for about 13 years, but I did a lot of stuff before that, in engineering. However, I don't know all the details of what happened to the funding originally, but the funding was not there to finish it. Had it been, it would certainly have operated much better than it does today.
I was really just joking around. What is the length of the project? Y'all estimate it's 10 years? Is that what I heard?
We've got a plan right now that proposes about 8 years of construction. So I'll start over here.
I have a few questions, so you can come back to me too. My first question is, you mentioned there is about $1 million a day in spend. How much of that is going to be put into South Carolina's workforce? Is there any kind of requirement on it being a South Carolina contractor and how much they have to spend or hire here?
There's no requirements for it having to be a South Carolina team, but I will tell you right now, to get a project like this built, there will certainly be a a need to have local workers to work on that. They're not gonna, I mean, I won't pretend to sit here and guess how many workers they'll be bringing in, but I mean, we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of people that will be working on these projects, especially the larger phases, and it will absolutely 100% rely on a workforce that's here. That is certainly a challenge on this project. It's just a challenge in industry in general is the labor force to do, these just construction in general. So, but so we don't have a requirement saying there's got to be a South Carolina. We cannot do that because there's federal money involved. We couldn't specify. We will have DBE requirements on the project for a certain percentage to go towards disadvantaged businesses. Okay. All right, yes, sir, in the back.
You know, a lot of the big contractors are awfully busy now. Do you all expect you're going to have a problem finding a big contractor that can do this project? And if so, how far out in the future are you looking to actually have the contractor on the job?
So, a great question. Some of the, and I'll just go ahead and kind of tell you, we put this out. You may have heard, if you keep up with what's going on at SCDOT, we put the project out as one big project back in February of this past year. So there was a reason we did that. It's a complicated project, and it would have made a lot of sense for one firm to design the whole thing so that it's integrated and works together. There are some natural breaks in some places that you can break off pieces, but as you get into the heart of what we'll call malfunction junction, it's extremely complicated. And we did not want to go through that exercise. We did try to procure, we had 2 teams that were very interested in pursuing the project. And unfortunately, once we put out the RFQ that I mentioned earlier, literally one of the teams backed out 3 days after we released it. And it was very unfortunate timing for us because we felt like they were solid. They were both very qualified teams. So with that being said, we said we need to step back and take a different approach to this. Any contractor, no matter how big they were, would have broken this project up into pieces. I mean, they wouldn't have gone out there and just had guys scattered. There's just not enough people to do that. So they would have attacked this thing in phases anyway. So we made an attempt to figure out the best way to kind of phase this, and we've been working on that. I don't have all those details for you today. There will be more details coming up soon. We're working with Federal Highways and my bosses. We've kind of are vetting that plan, and I haven't met with them to fully vet it, so I don't want to go into all the details, but it will be more of a phased approach. So to kind of get around to answer your question, there's some phases or parts of this that are certainly much smaller. When I say smaller, we're probably talking 150 million. So it's not tiny, but they're much smaller than 1.2 billion. So I think you're going to see maybe some contractors that are more local that certainly could probably attack some of those smaller pieces, whereas maybe some of the larger pieces, the larger phases, probably would require a contractor that's maybe not traditionally has not done work here in South Carolina, and that's probably wrong to say, but has done bigger projects, certainly.
Have you brought up all the right-of-ways yet?
No, sir, we are just getting underway with acquiring the right-of-way. We had some early tracks that were deemed to be hardship cases, and those are requests that come to us. We don't specify what a hardship is. Somebody comes to us and says, I have a hardship, but we've had a couple of those. But we are just getting underway over the last, say, month or so, I guess, in earnest, starting to buy the right-of-way, and it's going to be prioritized based on kind of where we're going with the phases and how we're going to deliver this. So we're focused on a certain area right now, but we will work through the project and get to all of it. So,
how many businesses and homes are projected to have to be relocated or moved?
Yeah, there's approximately 300 parcels that we're looking at. Not all of those need to be relocated. Of course, as we approach any property owner, there are numerous steps that we go through, but everything has an umbrella federal law over it called the Uniform Act for short. And that requires DOT not only to do what we want to do, but there's a requirement that we pay just compensation through the due process of law. So the old thought of people being taken out in the middle of the night and thrown out in the street, that is not how this happens in any way. The first thing we attempt to do is to negotiate with property owners for property we need for public use. And we actually spend a lot of time trying to do a negotiation and make it as good for both parties as we can.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
how is the funding going to work on this?
As in, is it funded or?
Well, no, I mean, you gotta pay for the $1 billion. How are you gonna do that?
Yes, it's, right now, it's basically considered to be a federally funded project, but, you know, DOT, we have multiple funding sources, and it's very, very complex to try to describe all that, but it's probably, yeah. I will say the project is funded, but it will be a combination of, mostly federal funds right now, but I'm not gonna say that, depending on the timing of it, it could be partially bonded. But again, that's, right now we've got it set up as a federally funded project and the funding's in place.
Follow-up question on throughput. Is there anything projected for not local traffic, you mentioned freight, thought me, where somebody says, I usually just cut through Columbia on the interstate going to Charleston. What alternate routes? I think like 34, Winsboro, around that way, and Lexington coming in on Sunset Boulevard. Do you see other people taking alternate routes and getting traffic, anything to set up for that?
Yeah, so there will be people taking alternate routes as they move through this corridor during construction. Part of that happens as the construction starts. So it depends on what phase is under construction at that time. It will dictate where freight or travelers, or even sometimes commuters, may choose an alternate route, whether it be St. Andrews or Broadway Road or going all the way up to like Jenkinsville and around that way. Some of that will start to happen. In addition, we've got we're working with the Comet on a mobile app so that people can, we're going to get the word out as far as day to day what's going on in the project corridor. That also gets fed up to Google and Apple and everybody, so that any kind of lane closures, delays will be captured by those systems and given out in real time to people using GPS.
Going back to the right-of-way concerns, do you have any right-of-way that you think you'll have difficulty getting? Because normally acquiring all the right-of-way is probably the hardest nut to crack in a project this size.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question to answer. I would probably answer that. I don't necessarily have a track that I'm going, that one's going to be hard, because it really just depends on, where the owner's at, and how, they might be a very willing seller at that point. Like, this is great. I'm glad you came along. I was looking to get out of here anyway. Or they might be, I don't want to move, and I'm going to hire an attorney, and I'm going to fight this, and condemn me. So
obviously, you got enough right away to get started, whatever phase you're in.
So yeah, probably some of the earlier phases. I mean, again, we're still going to have to acquire right of way, and we're probably looking at least a year or better before we have a design build contractor fully on board, ready to go with the first phase. So we still have some time to do that, but we are focusing on a phase that has more limited right of way, I guess, so that we can get that acquired while we're buying the rest of it for the bigger. So there will be some tough tracks, there's no doubt. So.
All right, I think you. The contractors, they have a phase in there, their rate, and then you get their job done on time, are they defined, or their time element that generally in contract like that?
A lot of times there are. We'll work through those details. Kind of the question was whether or not there was, I guess, incentives or disincentives, and a lot of times we will include those in a contract if a contractor finishes a certain phase by a milestone, and we certainly are going to be looking at some milestone dates, then we would pay them an incentive, whereas if they don't finish in a timely manner, we would charge them liquidated damages for any delays, and we certainly will be looking at that along with possibly some lane rentals and things like that, where we might let them close some lanes for an extended period of time, but we won't charge them for it. So it would be painful, obviously, but they're going to pay for that, and then we'd obviously be able to take that money and put it back into the project or something else.
Can I ask you a question about projects in general other than this one? I mean, is that fair?
Sure, we'll do our best to answer it. So.
Y'all are involved in other things, or have been involved in other things at DOT. I have always wondered why in the world anybody would build a highway, an interstate highway, like the one in Greenville,
that goes nowhere. I mean, if you were going to make it a cut through to Atlanta, why wouldn't you at least connect it with I-85? And ideally, take it on over to Fort Clemson, but why? That's a legitimate need in terms of moving traffic. But why would it not be connected to I-85? That's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Are you talking about the Southern Connector, the toll road? I-185, the toll road?
The toll road that's been foreclosed. At least that's, I understand
Yeah, that specific project, honestly, I do not know the details behind it. That predated my time at DOT, and I wasn't involved. So I can't really hazard a guess. I'd have to go read the environmental document, and if there were federal funds involved, and I'm not sure if there were or not, since it was a toll facility. So I guess there was a concessionaire involved, and that was privately funded or paid for and then reimbursed through the tolls, I think. But I don't know if there was a NEPA document done and there was a purpose and need that was identified, and if it was narrowly focused on we're just trying to get traffic from here to here and try to avoid kind of the 85 through 85 juncture, but then I guess they supposedly met that, but obviously it failed. But I know I'm not answering your question. I'm just not that familiar with that project. So sorry.
Seems like in Charleston, which has done an awful lot of highway work down there, and everything they built was up. So everything that was down that was already there stayed there, and there was no stoppage. Is that not correct? I mean, are we not going to? We're going to build up, or we're going to stop everything, and people's value of their houses go down because they don't want to live with that crap for 10 years.
So mostly in Charleston, the reason it's built up is for environmental reasons, for avoiding the marshes, and also for avoiding flood. So that's predominantly why it's done down there. It's significantly more expensive to do it that way. So our revenue stream wouldn't stretch nearly as far, wouldn't be able to attack nearly as many problems on the system as we can now if we were to take that same philosophy and spread it statewide. So this is
a better deal than we get.
They get a more expensive deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They pay the same taxes I pay.
I guess I'll answer it this way. We do only what's necessary to be done in that area. We are totally incentivized to spend only what's necessary on the problems that we rank with local officials, and we go after the highest priorities first. As far as Carolina Crossroads / Malfunction Junction, instead of building up, which would be more expensive, we're building out. And only in that footprint that's necessary to get traffic to move as efficiently as possible. And we've projected out to 2040. So we know this area is growing. We've looked forward, and this system won't break when it opens. It's projected to last at least until 2040 and then continue on from there. But thank you very much. I want to be sensitive to you today.
Brian and I'm here to save you, but they have said they would remain a little bit later. If anybody has questions, they will stay behind to answer. So, Brian and Lad, thank you for spending time with us. We wish you the best, and know we're going to be interested in what you're going to do, and we can't wait to celebrate. It's going to be 8 years before we can celebrate. I hope I'm still living, but I will be here cheering you on.
So from the concrete jungle of Carolina Crossroads, next week we have a naturalist from USC, Rudy Mackey's coming to talk to us. We are looking for somebody to introduce him, so if anybody has a special connection with Rudy, we'd love to have you introduce him.
Thank you, Mason. And now, let's close in song.